It's the most wonderful time of the year, with the kids jingle belling.
Merry Christmas!
Looks like Martha Stewart threw up in here.
This is delicious, honey.
It's a little dry.
Well, mine's delicious.
Mine's dry.
Do you want to trade?
It's
Christmas. It's Christmas. It's Christmas.
with those holiday greetings and gifts.
How we were going to survive Christmas with 12 people stuck in a house with no heat and no electricity.
Or food.
There's plenty of leftovers, Howard.
Beer it is.
It's the weirdest thing. There's no cars, no people.
How long can this keep up?
We heard something on the roof.
The hell's this?
St. Nicholas is not coming this year. Instead, a much darker, ancient spirit.
Those are hooves. Elk or a goat?
What kind of goat walks on its hind legs?
His name is Krampus. He and his helpers did not come to give, but to take.
Everybody, hold on to each other.
He is the shadow of St. Nicholas.
It's Christmas. Nothing bad's gonna happen on Christmas.
Hey, this is Jules O'Loughlin, and you're listening to Monday Morning Critic Podcast.
I have to say, Jules, I feel like you brought up Australia earlier. I've had many cinematographers on. I feel like most of the ones that I appreciate the most are either from New Zealand or from Australia. I swear. I mean, there's others, obviously, that I love, but often the case, that is their home. Is that a coincidence, or am I just seeing things in a very favorable manner?
Yeah, no, I think there's. I mean, we've got a bit of a rich history of cinematographers down under. I'm not sure why we produce such good cinematographers. I don't know. I think maybe it's the harsh light that we are born into from the moment we come into the world. You know, there's no ozone, and it's harsh, and it's bright, and it's hot. So we've got to be controlling that light from a very early age, I think. So yeah, I'm not sure what it is, but we've produced a few good cinematographers, that's for sure.
Yeah, and you know, and early on, you kind of start in a career that you're not fond of, right? And I know Dad seems like a super nice guy, lawyer, but maybe not so supportive of a career in the arts. Is that accurate, Jules?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I'm the youngest of 10 children, and my father, who was he was a criminal lawyer, he was a barrister, and he was a great supporter of the arts, but he didn't think his children should work in the arts. You know, you had to get a proper job, you know, a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant, or you had to go to university, get the degree. So yeah, as I said, he was a great supporter, but he wasn't a great supporter of us working in the arts. And I remember, at the age of about 18 or 19, I wanted to get a cadetship with the Sydney Morning Herald. The Sydney Morning Herald, which is a local newspaper, as a photographer, and he kind of talked me out of that. And I ended up going to law school myself. I got a law degree, and I worked in finance for some years as a futures trader. So I was trading futures for various brokers for about 5 years, and then I actually started trading for myself as what you call a local trader back in the day on the Sydney Futures Exchange. And during that time, I put myself through law school part-time, did a lot of traveling, but continued to do my photography. Love photography, and of course I loved movies from a very early age, and it was
Yeah.
in my early 20s that I started to put two and two together about photography and making movies, and I came to the realization that there was a photographer on every movie who shot at 24 frames per second. And so the penny kind of dropped, and I was like, it's a cinematographer who makes movies. And that's when I started to do a lot of kind of my own research and my own reading, and discovered the art of cinematography. But it wasn't until my father actually passed away in the late 90s, 1999, that I kind of that I threw in the career in finance and ripped up my law degree and went, damn this, I'm going to go to film school and become a cinematographer.
Jules, I did know about your economics background. I never knew you graduated law school. I never knew that was a part of it.
Yeah, it was. So, yeah, it was, I guess when in my mid-20s in finance, I actually started out doing a commerce degree. Went to university and did commerce, but I only did a couple of years of that, and really just I hated it. I loathed it. I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
But having said that, I then went into futures, which is like working in the stock exchange, I guess, and I did that for some years, but it took me a while to realize that futures and stocks and all that, it's all about money, right? And it took me a while to realize that while it's nice to have money, I wasn't motivated by money. And to do well in that kind of career, you've got to be, you've got to love all facets of it, and you've got to love making it. And so, as I said, it's nice to have it, but it certainly wasn't a motivational factor for me. But at the same time as I was working there and doing law at law school, it was, I had a big outlet in my own time with my photography. I loved my photography, and I did a lot of it. And I was doing quite a lot of rock climbing then and mountaineering, and I was fusing the two. And working in futures did afford a reasonable pay packet, and so I was able to do a lot of traveling. And then in about '96, I left the futures floor, and I just graduated from law school, and I went backpacking for 2 years. I got married, and we went. My wife and I went backpacking around Western Asia and Southeast Asia and the Middle East on a 2-year honeymoon, and that's where I really honed my skills at photography. I was shooting slide film, and anyone who knows anything about shooting slides or transparency very quickly learn about exposure, and you learn about light. There wasn't much tolerance in shooting slide film, and I shot thousands of photographs in those 2 years, and that's where I really, I guess, learned about composition and lighting, and it was a great kind of training ground for me, I guess.
Jules, do you think your dad would have been proud? Because he gave you a camera at 7, right? Do you think if he had been alive today and he had seen what you've accomplished, do you think he would have been proud?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, as I said, he wanted us all to get degrees and to get proper jobs, but it's only, I guess, that came from ignorance, I guess, of not knowing how that really worked in the area. But for sure, absolutely. I mean, if my mother died when I was 8. So she died when I was very young, and so I mean, both parents, if they'd seen where I had got to in my career, they'd both be extremely proud. So I think it would have converted my father, his grandchildren. He would have encouraged them all to go into the arts. Don't get a job as a lawyer or as a doctor. Go into the arts. It's far more fulfilling. Better to be doing the thing that you love. So that's what I think. When I was younger, growing up in my family, it was it was, you know, you had your 9 to 5 job and you kind of loved, but now, I mean, my any advice I'd give to anyone would be follow your dreams and do what you love doing, and the
Yeah.
rest will come. You know.
No, that's good advice. But I also can't fault your father, right? Because he wants the best for his son. He wants a guarantee for his son. And from that point of view, I get what he was trying to do with you or say to you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, absolutely. There was, I mean, like any parent, you care about, and I'm going through this at the moment. I've got two children, one 21, the other one 18, and there is that aspect of, you know, you're encouraging your children to follow their dreams and do what that really interests them. But in the back of my mind is certainly, you know, in this day and age, I mean, how are my children going to afford to buy a house, and how are they going to afford to live? And so you know, as survival instincts for your children, and that nurturing, that caring kind of aspect where you want the best for them, you know, to do what they love doing, but you know how hard the world can be.
Yeah.
And you know, at the end of the day, they've got to make a crust as well, and earn a buck, and support themselves, and hopefully the families that they will have. You know.
Yeah, well said. You know, and getting into your wonderful work, I mean, just reading some of your filmography, you know, Wish You Were Here, Miss Marvel, The Old Man, Joe vs. Carol, I mean, on and on, See, The Hitman's Bodyguard, the epic Krampus. There's so much to your work. And I want to say on your website, that montage video is pretty freaking incredible.
Yeah, I must update that, mate. It's a bit old, that one.
No, there's
it's a few years old. Yeah.
I like
Sorry,
it. I love it. I love the music in the background. I love the way it portrays your work. You know, it's a really well done. Let me ask you, what was it about 2001: A Space Odyssey that really hit home with you?
Well, I saw. I can't remember whether I saw that when I was 9 or 12, but one of the two. But I used to go to the movies by myself. You know, being the youngest of 10 kids, you know, by the time you come along, it's you know, you can disappear for a whole day, and no one knows where you are. Then the old man would eventually say, "Oh, has anyone seen Jules?" You know, and I mean, these days I think parents are a little bit more, but there were 10 of us, and we used to kind of wander off and do our own thing. But I started taking myself to the movies on my own from quite an early age, and I would go to I'd get the train into Sydney, into the CBD, and there are a couple of theatres there that no longer exist, the Roxy being one of them, and that's where I saw 2001. And listen, when I saw that film, I had no idea of what I was watching in the sense of its themes and its tone, and the storyline. It was kind of out of this world, and it still is. But it had a profound effect upon me. And I just think that is the power of cinema, and it's the power of Stanley Kubrick. But it's really stayed with me. It had an enormous impact, and I became a real sci-fi nut after that. Before seeing 2001, I'd seen Star Wars, and that was in the movie theater. That was 1977.
Yeah,
and that, of course, was a different kind of experience. That was about exhilaration and fun and just sheer kind of entertainment. But 2001, you know, is, as we all know, is a much different type of film, and it affected me on a much deeper level. And it's, you know, that film is still, it's in my top 5. It's really just an incredible movie.
Jules, what else would you throw in your top 5 off the top of your head?
Well, listen, Gallipoli. I'm not sure whether many of your audience know Gallipoli, but Gallipoli is a very famous Australian film.
Yeah.
It stars in it. It's directed by Peter Weir, and it's about a campaign in World War I that's very famous in Australia, and it's effectively it's a love story between two friends, two guys. You know, boy meets boy loses boy, and boy finds boy again, and then there's a tragic ending. and it's just such a beautifully told story by a master director, Peter Weir, Australian director, shot by a master cinematographer, Russell Boyd, and that film just never fails to draw a tear to my eye. But apart from that, Gladiator has to be. Gladiator is my. I wouldn't say it's my all-time favorite. My all-time favorite film is Blade Runner. I can watch that film over and over again and get something from it. But my Desert Island film, that's the VHS, right? That's the VHS. If you're going to be stranded on a desert island, your Desert Island film may not be your favorite film, but it's the film that you can watch over and over and over again and still get a blast. And that's definitely Gladiator for me. So. I love that film, everything about it, from Russell's performance to Ridley's direction to the way John Matheson shot it, just a sensational film. But apart from that, what else is up? Alien is definitely up. There's a few sci-fis there.
Yeah, some
Alien
good calls.
is in there as well, and The Shining. I'm a huge Stanley Kubrick fan, and I love Ridley Scott. There's a few of my favorites.
No, that's a great list. And Peter Weir, I think he did Dead Poets Society as well. You have some really good people.
He did.
Yeah. Speaking of some talented people, let's get into your work. One of my favorite shows that I wish more people would talk about is the show C on Apple TV. I absolutely love it. It's gorgeous. You did 2 episodes. You did Silk and House of Enlightenment. And there are some wonderful shots in House of Enlightenment. There's some beautiful scenic shots, and there's a shot of a bridge that I've fallen in love with, Jules. I absolutely love it. It's towards the end of the show. Talk about your experience on C, and what a wonderful, just visually beautiful show.
Yeah, so C it's a really interesting show. Francis Lawrence set the show up. He was the originating director, and Yo Willems, cinematographer. But it's set, it's 500-600 years in the future, and it's a post-apocalyptic world that we find ourselves in, and it's almost like we've returned to the Iron Age. It's a little bit of Mad Max. It's a little bit of sword and sandals. But it's become a primitive world, and through some kind of virus or some happenstance, human beings have lost their eyesight. They've lost their ability to see. Everyone is blind. So from the get-go, it's a really interesting world that we create. People have to survive without their ability to see, and so season 1 was shot in British Columbia, in and around Vancouver. So beautiful scenery, and we shot the 65, which is a fantastic format, big widescreen format. And so the idea behind the show stylistically was that everything was to be shot on location. So sets were to be built, if they were to be built, on location, and all exterior, very limited lighting, which is interesting. So if you're doing night scenes, we would tend to shoot in magic hour or towards the end of the day, and then into early evening. So very limited lighting. So very kind of naturalistic feel to it. And I came along to do Eps 6 and episode 8. And the funny thing was, I was working with John Steinberg and Dan Schatz, 2 showrunners that I've worked with quite a bit. I did Black Sails with them. C was my second show with them, and then I went on to do The Old Man, and now I'm doing Percy Jackson with them. And I love these guys. The thing about John Steinberg, the writer and showrunner, and I learned this on Black Sails, that every episode that we did, he would up the ante. So, I'd be doing an episode on Black Sails and be like, all right, okay, so we're going to do this battle scene of this ship at sea, and we've only got, we've got a boat and a tank and a small half boat. How are we going to do this? And so we'd pull it off, and then the next episode would be like, right, okay, 3 boats at sea. Oh, Jesus, how are we going to do this one? So every episode, John would kind of up the ante as far as story, but also in the degree of difficulty and how we were going to shoot it. So the funny thing about episode 6 on sea was I came along, and this show is all naturalistic. It's all shot on location. And now in episode 6, John has written this whole sequence that takes place in a cave. And he said, listen, I don't want there to be any light in there. And so we had this long conversation about, okay, John, yeah, we want it to be, I've got to see what's going on. We need to know what the hell's going on. And so we came up with this idea of the cave was lit by glowworms. But it was a fairly terrifying kind of notion for me, because I was the one that was responsible for taking this great series, which had been shot on location, all very naturalistically, and now all of a sudden we've got to shoot on a stage in caves. So we had to build the caves on stage, and I've got to actually use light in there, movie lights, and little LED glowworms that we created. So I was tasked with the responsibility of somehow making this really naturalistically shot show now on stage, and I've got to maintain that kind of look and that feel. And I had a few kind of sleepless nights in the episode. But if you watch the episode, those scenes which take place in the cave, I think we really nailed it. We pulled it off.
Yeah, big time.
I'm actually really proud of that episode.
Yeah, both great episodes. And let me ask you this, Jules. TV, for those listening, TV is a little different than in movies in a sense that I don't understand why you wouldn't be hired for C to do the cinematography for the whole show, right? So what happens if the next cinematographer has a different vision or style of shooting than you do? Doesn't it make it a different type of show visually, or am I just reading too much into it?
Derek, are you talking within the season, or say are you within season 2? Or...
All right, so you did in C, you did Silk and House of Enlightenment, right? So say somebody who did that season 2 other episodes or 3 other episodes. What happens if their style is that? Like, I love your style of shooting, I love it. But what happens if the next cinematographer or DP has a completely different way of shooting, a different way of looking at things? That's, I guess, from a novice point of view, I find that hard to understand and process.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've done quite a few TV series now, working with other DPs, and you just tend to kind of fall into, not fall in, but you ensure that the show that you're shooting has a through line. And that's not to say that the things that I do on my episodes can be quite unique, or I can use my particular sensibilities and infuse that into the episodes. I always say, like on a TV show, the audience are seeing the same characters, and they're often seeing the same locations. They're seeing the similar costumes, and a similar, the same kind of story. The world in which they created for these characters, where the audience are kind of in and one in those things. You've got those through lines that are traveling throughout the season on a TV series. So if we take, as cinematographers, if we actually shift away somewhat from the previous cinematographer, from their episode, for me, it's never a problem.
Okay.
Because the audience are immersed in that same world. So, for instance, in one episode, if it's all very controlled camera work and cranes and dollies, and in the next episode, different cinematographer. You want to go with a handheld feel or whatever it may be. As long as it's serving the story. I always feel that the audience never jumps out of the show. They never go, well, this is a completely different show that I'm seeing here. But yeah, so I think that we as cinematographers, you know, we've always got this brief of what is the show that we're shooting, and so we have a roadmap. We know where we're going. We know what we're trying to do with it stylistically. And if we take, you know, little side routes and go off on tangents and infuse those particular episodes with our own style and sensibility, I never feel as though it takes, well, it shouldn't take the audience away from the show and make them feel as though they're in a different show. So, you know, we've got plenty of room as artists to kind of do little side steps and little detours and take different routes, but still maintain the integrity of the show. And I think you see that in a show like you definitely see it in a show like Black Sails, you know, the work that I was doing, and the work that my fellow DP in season 1 and 2, Lucas Atlam was doing. You know, it is different, but it's still the same world, and I think you can do that. There's never a problem with doing that.
Yeah, it makes sense the way you say that. It makes a lot of sense. The other show, I mean, we could go on and on talking about all your work, but I narrowed it down to 3. The second one is The Old Man, which I absolutely am in love with. You know, you did episodes 3 and 4. I love the way you shot that fight scene when it starts off on the other side of the window, and then we go into the house a little bit. I love the way that worked out.
Yeah, The Old Man was it was such a great project. Once again, I'm working with showrunners John Steinberg and Dan Schatz, and of course Jeff Bridges, John Lithgow, Amy Brannigan. You know, fantastic actors, just amazing actors, and to work with legends like Jeff and John was just a dream. But we did have a stylistic. There was this kind of style that we had of long takes, long, you know, oneers, moving the camera in a way that would allow actors, you know, to walk out of the frame, and then we would find them again, and they'd come into the frame. So it was a lot of fun, and that was a style that we spoke a lot about and tried to maintain throughout the season. But this idea of certainly with the one you're talking about, it's Ep3, isn't it? Where Amy leaves the house.
Episode 3. Yep.
She jumps in the car and she notices that the dogs in the back of Jeff's car are going crazy, and
there's a bullet hole on the window. There's a bullet.
That's it. And in the background, we, the audience, see Jeff walk through the house, and then we see this shadowy figure following him, and so we're ahead of Amy.
Yeah,
you know, we get a sense of what's going on there, but she's got no idea. And then she goes over to investigate, and the whole thing is that, you know, it's the illusion of filmmaking. It's done as one take, but I think there were 3 cuts in there. There was a Steadicam move. There was a dolly jib move, and then we go into some very kind of controlled handheld. You spend a lot of time working out a sequence like that. Not only you're working with your camera crew and grips and lighting for me, but I'm working with the stunt coordinator and the great stunt guys that we had, and then the actors. And you map out this whole sequence. You know, it's one move. Where do we put the hidden cuts in? How do we hide it? How do we shoot, you know, car windows and the windows of the house without getting reflections? And, you know, so there's a little bit of VFX work in there that you actually pull the glass out and they replace it later, so you're not seeing yourself reflected. So there's a whole bunch of things, and I guess that's what filmmaking is, right? It's the collaboration of a whole bunch of people with a whole bunch of skill sets, and you're all working together for the one common goal. And it's not always that you get the desired effect, but in this case, we pulled it off, we think.
Yes.
Because people mention it and they really like it, and at the end of the day, it's driving the story. You know, it's not showy for showy's sake. It's not trickery just so we can, you know, show how clever we are as filmmakers. It's a device that we're using and techniques that we're using to hopefully drive the story and invest the audience and keep them connected with the characters, and hopefully put them in the shoes of the character, and you know, to increase, you know, to accentuate that thriller aspect of what's happening, what's going on in the scene.
Yeah, and another great scene that I love in that same episode is when he pulls over his Volvo to get his rifle, and you can see a back shot of the street.
Yeah.
To me, I love those type of scenes. I thought it was really a great, beautifully shot scene.
Yeah, no, a lot of fun, and you know, once again, Jeff Bridges. Wow, I mean, you just have to throw a camera on that guy, and the frame just comes to life, right? He's such an interesting guy to shoot, and I think audiences love him, and he's just such an iconic actor, and what a dude he is.
And is it hard, Jules, to, I mean, obviously you're a pro's pro, I get that. But I was talking to the cinematographer who did Hell or High Water with him. And you know, from your point of view, when you're watching acting at that level, is it hard to kind of continue? I mean, I get it, pro's pro, but as a fan, aren't you almost blown away by what you're watching on camera? Like, I don't know. To me, it would be like, I don't think I could do it. I would be so blown away by what I'm seeing. And he and Lithgow and, you know, Amy and all of them.
Yeah, well, you know, the first thing that happens when you first meet someone like Jeff, it's like, you know, holy shit, this is Jeff Bridges. Wow, hey, I'm working with Jeff Bridges. Isn't this awesome? And you know, that kind of feeling comes and goes, but it's because you shift into work mode. But then there's something that happens, and this is something that particularly happens, I feel, as a cinematographer when you're operating the camera. And I do a lot of operating. I didn't operate on the Old Man. Sometimes, you know, talking of Australian DPs, we come up actually operating our own cameras, most of us. So we're very used to doing it. So we're adept at operating and at lighting. But often in America, you can't do it because of union rules. You've got to have operators. And on some of the really bigger projects, you may want to step away from operating, and because the job is so big. But there's something that happens, and it's not just with these great actors, you know, like Jeff Bridges or Woody, who I've worked with, or Ryan Reynolds, you know, or whoever it may be. Sometimes an actor that's not very well known at all. But when you've got your eye to that viewfinder, and you're seeing an incredible performance, there's nothing that compares to that. You know, I remember some years ago, my son, he was about 7 or 8, and he had an inkling of the difference between main unit and second unit, and he's like, Dad, don't you, like, I know that you don't do a lot of the big car chases or the big action scenes. You know, it's often a second unit that's doing that, and you're working with the actors. Don't you want to do all the action stuff? Don't you want to do the car chases? And I said, no, it's like my thing. Yeah, like if I can, if there's time, if the schedule allows it, I love doing that stuff. But I said, what I really love is, more than anything, is a scene where with two fantastic actors, and that's what I'm shooting. I'm just watching these people perform. And there's nothing viewfinder where it feels like you're the only one in the cinema. You're sitting in row 5 because all around, you know, in that viewfinder, it's black on the edges, and it's just that frame, and it's that amazing actor that's there performing, and there's nothing like it. That for me is the greatest thrill of being a cinematographer. And so when you've got the likes of Jeff or John going at it in a two-hander, I mean, that's what it's all about for me.
Oh, that's a great answer. I have to tell you, so I love all your work. I'm going to end the interview talking about Krampus, and I'm going to tell you of all your work, this is easily my favorite and the most beautiful. And I'm going to use the word beautiful because it is beautifully shot.
Yeah.
It is beautifully done. And I want to show you, I know you're driving, but I remember after the movie, I remember.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry about that, mate. I'll watch it. I'll watch a movie while I'm driving. Not a problem. Look at that.
I absolutely love this movie. And I was doing research on this movie, and I was like, I was reading the director, Michael Dougherty. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, Mike Doughty. Yeah,
Doughty.
Awesome guy, and a great just loves horror. Let me just cut in really quickly.
Yeah.
The thing that got me on Krampus was when Mike, I met him over Skype. We did an interview back in the days when we Skyped. And we hit it off. But the thing that got me when Mike said, I want to do it all in camera. And of course there's some VFX in there, but he's like the creatures that they're all puppets. We're using Weta Workshop, and it's all going to be puppeteering, and we're going to do it in camera. And I just went, that sounds really cool. That sounds awesome. And to his great credit, he fought tooth and nail to make that as much as possible in camera, that film. And it really shows. And it was so much fun shooting it, shooting with the guys from Weta, New Zealand. And it was awesome. And Mike he's such a master of horror and loves everything about horror. Really infectious kind of personality. He starts talking about horror films, and you just can't help but get sucked in. And it was an awesome experience.
Yeah, when I say beautiful, I mean I really mean it. Like the snow scenes, there's a darkness, but it's snow. Like I love it. Like I love those scenes. I love this movie. But the reason I bring up Michael first was he was getting interviewed, I think a couple months back, and he was talking about the reaction when this movie first came out and how mad a few people were. These are some of the quotes. I'll read you quick that. And Michael posted these because Michael was like, he was kind of finding these funny, right? So one person said, "You all need Jesus. My 9-year-old daughter had nightmares for 2 nights. 3-year-old is hiding in the corner. Christmas movies should be against the law. Scary Christmas movies should be against the law." And sending a giant middle finger to those who made Cramp. I mean, it's so. But these are the same people, Jules, that will fight over $100 off a television set on Black Friday. So it's like such a hypocritical thing. I'm going to tell you, Jules, I absolutely love the way this movie looks. Your thoughts? I mean, I'll never look at Gingerbread Men the same way again. What is when you look back at this movie? I mean, I have to believe that this movie is brought to even amongst all the great work you have. I mean, this thing is an instant classic.
Yeah, it's good. Listen, it's a great film. There's nothing better, right, than scaring the hell out of little children at Christmas time, right? But it's it's one of those films that it's scary, but it's a lot of fun at the same time, right? But as far as the look of the movie, we had a really fantastic conceptual artist. And when I got to New Zealand for pre-production, and Mike had been there for some weeks, he presented me with a whole bunch of concept art. And when I look back at that concept, and some of it I had framed and I put on my wall at home, and I look at the concept art and I look at the movie, and it's really cool because it's probably the closest that when we make movies, when we're in pre-production, as cinematographers, we always have a roadmap, a visual roadmap, and it may be paintings or photographs or even concept art, and things that you're trying to emulate, inspiration or references that you may have. And when I look back at that film, I look at the concept art, and then I look at what we actually made, and I love how close the two are. Do you know what I mean? Because for me, it was like, this concept art is so good, and it's so interesting, and that's what I want to. That's what I want to make. As far as the lighting and the feel and the tone of it. So they're very close, the concept art and the finished film. And I'm really proud of that film and the work that Mike and I did on it. And
Jules,
and
is that is that a challenge getting the concept art onto the screen? Is that a huge challenge for you?
Well, sometimes it's not. Sometimes you don't want to emulate the concept art totally. Do you know what I mean? There may be aspects of the concept art that don't work for you lighting wise, or because often I'm not involved at that stage, and so I'm working on a project at the moment where the concept art is just it's amazing and it's beautiful, but I'm not emulating that in completely. I'm stepping away and because it doesn't work for me lighting wise or color wise but there was something about the concept art on Krampus that really it affected me in a deep way, in a deep artistic way, and Mike I know loved it, and so it's like, right, that's what we have to do. And so then to create that, to recreate it, I guess, in a way, or to create it on screen, is it difficult? Oh, mate, every bloody day it's difficult, right? It's a tough job. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's what it's kind of like. That's what I do. You know what I mean? It's fun.
I get it. Yeah,
and it has its challenges, but you throw yourself into the fight, and hopefully you pull it off. And I think in this case we pulled it off with Krampus. But it's is it hard? Yeah, it's always hard in some way, shape, or form. But it's always bloody good fun, and I love my job, and it's I just love doing it. So when you dot the I's and you cross the T's and you kind of nail it, you go, oh yeah, that's not too bad. And other times a bit better. But hopefully most of the time what you're doing is working for the story that you're trying to tell. And it's working for the movie, and it's hopefully having an effect on an audience in a really good way. Invest them in the story that they're seeing on screen, and hopefully you've done your job.
Yeah, and I have to say, Jules, many times I like to get people's feedback on what they think of the film. So I went on YouTube and they were showing, clips from Krampus, and people, person after person, felt just like I did. It's so beautiful and terrifying. Like, that's tough to accomplish. Usually it's one or the other. It's never both.
Yeah.
Jules, you guys as a team, you nailed this movie. My God, I was watching it last night. I'm like, this thing is just stunning.
Yeah, it was. It's a cool movie. Anyone who hasn't seen Krampus, make sure you watch it this Christmas and watch it with little children.
Is there, Jules? Thank you for all this time. I have two quick questions left for you. Is there a scene is there a scene for you? And I hate asking cinematographers this question because they're proud of the whole pie. I get it, but is there a scene for you that really you're just looking back you love in this movie?
Oh, in Krampus.
Yes.
Is there? So I thought you were going to say in my career, and I had one for you.
Oh, wait. Okay. Let's ask. I'll take both of those answers. I would love to hear that.
Okay. Well, the one I was thinking of as you were asking it, there's a scene in episode 4 of The Old Man.
Okay.
Where it's a flashback where we're with Dan Chase, young Jeff Bridges, and he's in a Russian encampment, and he's going there to kidnap someone, but he's got to take a few guys out in the process. And there's a scene set at night. It's raining, miserable kind of conditions in this Russian encampment, and we had to tell this kind of fairly bloodthirsty kind of scene, but not be too overt. Like it's a violent scene, and so I came up with this idea of using lightning flashes to tell the story. So telling snippets of the story, and it's that thing of often it's what you think you've seen that's the most terrifying. not kind of showing something in its entirety. And so we show the sequence is done with using lightning flashes to effectively tell the story, and I love it. I'm really, super proud of that scene and how it turned out.
Great
And
scene. Great scene.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool, really cool.
Yeah.
Now getting back to Krampus, certainly the gingerbread scene is up there. It's so much fun, and that's one of the few scenes that we did have to use some heavy VFX for the gingerbread man.
Right.
But the rest of our creatures, as I said before, they're puppets. But that was just a really fun scene to shoot. A lot of fun, and of course we've got a lot of special effects in there with the fire and smoke and whatnot, and there's a lot of moving parts. But we had a lot of laughs shooting that scene. It was very, very funny, very funny. So yeah, that's certainly up there.
Jules, last question. I went through your filmography earlier. Miss Marvel. We talked about Old Man. We talked about C. We talked about all these wonderful. Currently, your work is all over my television, right? I mean, it's Apple TV, it's Hulu. That's got to be the biggest. Disney Plus. That's got to be the biggest compliment for you, is that your work is in demand, and that's a big reflection of your ability, I would believe, right, Jules?
Yeah, I seem to be on a bit of a roll with Disney at the moment. I've done a few Disney, Miss Marvel, and now I'm doing Percy Jackson.
That's right.
With them, and so there's been, with FX, the Old Man. So there's been a few there, but it's not. I don't know. It's I seem to go from job to job, and that's all one can ask for, really. At the end of the day, that you're kind of getting to do what you love doing, and you're in demand, and people love what you. I think at the end of the day, it's not just about what you're shooting and the results of what you're shooting. I think it's about how you work, as well.
Right.
It's how good a collaborator you are with your director and your production designer and your heads of department, but also how you conduct yourself. I think you're all you've got is your good name, and so there are kind of two aspects. I believe, to working as a cinematographer. It's what you're producing, but it's also how you conduct yourself, and it's just making a movie or a TV series is actually really difficult, or a very difficult thing to do, and at times a very stressful undertaking. And so you more and more, as you become more experienced, certainly for me, it's not only about the projects that you're doing, the story that you're trying to tell, but it's the people that you're working with. And at the end of the day, you just want to work with really talented people, but you want to work, more importantly, with decent people.
Right.
And so people that you have fun with and you can have a laugh with, and people, that when you're in the trenches together, everyone's conducting themselves, not only professionally, but in a way that makes you want to come back again the next day.
Right.
And I think that's as much of the job as it is, the thing that you're actually producing, the quality of your work.
Oh, that's so well said, Jules. As you can tell, I'm an enormous fan, and thank you so much for giving me time in your very, very busy schedule. You're such a good man to talk to. Thank you so much for this,
Derek. It's been great talking to you too. Anytime, man. This has been fun. Next time, hopefully, I won't be driving a car.